Hello, and welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have a very special guest, Paul Epstein. Paul is a former NFL and NBA executive, a two-time best-selling author, founder of Win Monday, Success Magazine top thought leader, and the founder of the San Francisco 49ers Talent Academy. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Paul Epstein.
Hey, Courtney, fired up to be here.
Paul, I am so excited. I have to let our listeners know right from the beginning. My husband and I got to witness you speaking at a conference, and you were absolutely phenomenal. So here you are today. I cannot wait to pick your brain, and for our listeners, just to hear all about your story. We'll certainly get into sport for sure.
Yeah.
But
And,
just
and
to
hey, Courtney, I want to give you a quick shout out too, because the way that we met, just to bring everybody into our, what we would call kind of behind the scenes life, right? So deliver a keynote, Spear Education, massive group of dentist practice owners. Of course, your husband is in that community. You were there and just geeking out on the sports stuff that I was, even though I talk about much grander things in sports, but it was about business and about life and about performance and about habits and about all these things. And we'll get to Win Monday. But where I want to give you a massive compliment, and this is actually, I know that a lot of our audience cares about life lessons and perspective and what things that we've learned along the way. I was taught at a very young age, especially coming from the sales ranks in the NFL and NBA, I was told closed mouths don't get fed. I'll repeat that. Closed mouths do not get fed. In other words, in sales, it meant if you do not ask, you will never win. You will never succeed. You have to ask. And so when you approached me and you were the kindest, warmest, ironically, one of the more positive people. So since your podcast is about positivity, but the way that you approached me and made the ask that leads to this conversation, you did not keep everything closed. Like it was very much a warm invitation and I felt that energy. And so in the spirit of partnership and meeting at the 50, that's why we're here.
Paul, thank you so much for that compliment. And, right back to you, just even giving me the time after to speak with me. I was truly honored. And so here we are. I
Let's
cannot wait
go.
to
Yeah.
jump right in. So if you could just start with maybe a background of yourself and just a general introduction.
Absolutely. So the world knows me most for my 15 years, decade and a half in the NFL and NBA. I sadly was not the player, so sorry to disappoint, but universally relevant is I have been in the same trenches of everybody that I am serving now. So kind of one of these cool things that I'm told as an author or as a speaker is you should serve the person that you once were. You should serve the person that you once were. So you think about your background, think about the credibility, think about the problems you've solved, think about how you flip those into opportunities and solutions, and you have these light bulb moments. And so now I pour myself as a speaker, as an author, as a founder, as an owner, as a CEO, and to Win Monday, which we'll get to. But really, I came from the trenches of sales. I came from the trenches of business development and revenue generation, which you could also just replace that with. I was pretty good at building relationships and connecting with people, even if it was through a telephone. I always knew my family. Courtney, you'll hopefully get a chuckle out of this. Because I couldn't stop yapping as a kid, my family said there's only two possible careers that you have. You're either going to be a lawyer or a salesperson. So check this out, though. The funny thing is, I turned out to be in sales and build a pretty awesome career as a sales leader in pro sports. And I happened to marry an attorney. So I guess my family got them both right. They just didn't know who Myra Epstein would be at some point in the future. So back to Paul, I worked in extremely challenging environments. And I think that's another cool piece of advice and perspective. Like I know we're talking to a broad range of folks from, hey, I'm studying sports management to I'm just in sports to I'm mid-career to I'm late career. And it's all good. What I want to share is a lot of times we think that you want your first job to be the dream job. You want to work for the best boss right out of the gates. And you want to work for an amazing workplace culture and best places to work when you're 21 years old. And that sounds awesome. And if it happens, please don't ruin that opportunity, because you will soon realize that you kind of cracked the holy grail, but it was accidental and it was luck because you just kind of fell into it so young. I didn't quite have that start. I always have believed that you either learn what to do or what not to do. And in the earliest stages of my career, it was more of the latter. And my fun little metaphor here is, in the dating world, sometimes you got to date a little crazy to find the one, right? Like, you got to go on some bad dates. You got to date a little crazy. And then eventually, hopefully, you find the one. So that's kind of a metaphor for my career, because I started working at what I still can't get used to the new name. It is now crypto.com arena. I can't go there. I'm just going to call it Staples Center for the rest of my life. And across the hallway, Kobe and Shaq with the Lakers were busy winning championships. I'm from LA. I'm a proud born and raised Angelino. And all my friends and family thought, oh my gosh, you work for the Lake Show. This is so freaking amazing. And if it sounds like a fairy tale, it's because it was. I did not work for the Lakers. I was on the other side of the hallway with the Clippers, which at the time ESPN said, you're the worst brand in sports. So this is my version of dating some crazy. They called us the worst brand in sports. The front cover, Courtney, of Sports Illustrated, my second week on the job as a sales guy, Sports Illustrated said, you're the worst franchise in sports history. And I had to sell that. So that was really the foundation of where I learned, as I now say from stage, how to play offense in a defensive environment. So for everyone listening or watching, defense is a metaphor for your hurdles, your obstacles, your setbacks, your challenges, the change that's happening in the world, the uncertainty that you're trying to navigate, the disruption, and you think about the complexity of the world and AI and what's it going to do. Cool. I don't care. Just call it defense. And what I have learned in the spirit of controlling the controllables is that no matter how defensive your environment is, no matter how defensive the world is around you, you, me, Courtney, we can always choose to play offense. And that's because I started working at places like the Clippers, and then fast forward, I was with the New Orleans Hornets. We almost lost the team to permanent relocation. I go to the Sacramento Kings. They put me in charge of company culture. And then a month later, a league-wide labor lockout. So how do you manage morale when it feels like people's livelihoods are taken away? And then I end up at the NFL league office. That was probably the least dramatic place that I had ever worked, even though it was really challenging. But I got to be a part of a Super Bowl revenue record breaking campaign. And I was leading national sales efforts there. So that was an amazing trophy. But you want to think about the stress and the goals and the pressure and the expectations. But that was one of those times where another lesson I fundamentally believe in is pressure is a privilege. Pressure is a privilege. If you don't feel pressure, you are not stretching yourself enough. You are not going to grow. You are not comfortable with discomfort. I was definitely not comfortable in that environment with those expectations. But the fact that I can now tell a happy ending to that story, that set my NFL career on a rocket ship. And that's when the Niners came calling. And then they say, hey, we're opening up Levi Stadium. Come help us open this brand new Silicon Valley, tech forward, progressive, innovative venue. We used to make money 10 times a year for football games. Now we got to monetize the building 250. We're good with the 10. Can you kind of handle the other 240 and build a team to do that? Again, Courtney, totally out of my comfort zone, had no idea what I was doing, selling tours and catered events and restaurants and museums, and I don't even know, but we figured it out. There's this element of building the capacity to figure things out in very uncomfortable, sometimes strange, always uncertain, always high change environments. And that really is what leads me to my current space. Is I went through a life-changing retreat when I was C-suite at the Niners. I did the inner work of my why and my purpose and my values. And I just started to realize that there's probably a bigger game for me to play. There's probably a bigger game for me to play. And I'm happy to double click on what that retreat was. But ultimately, it leads to a Jerry Maguire leap out of sports. And I landed in the industry that I was always supposed to be in, which is the people industry. And what I do is I speak to leaders and culture champions and high performers across all industries, including in a dental practice like at Spear, where I met you because of your husband and getting connected. And I feel like I'm just living a dream every single day. I literally get to breathe life into people. I get to inspire people. I get to energize people. I get to inject positivity into a world that needs more of it. So, your podcast, you doing what you do, me doing what I do, we are just laying bricks to make the world a better place.
Paul, I am just so excited for this conversation today because, I mean, beginning with sport management students and how to break into the industry, teaching these students, I think you give such incredible advice for them is, no matter what the experience is, and like you were saying, like you understand right from the beginning if maybe this is a good fit, or even if it was not, it still provides you direction and
Yes.
meaning to go forward and maybe a different direction. And so it really is, I think, the importance of being curious when you're young, asking questions, like you were mentioning, and then just all of your experience at the executive level in sport. And that's really where I would love to like take this conversation right now is being an executive 15 years, as you had mentioned, NBA and NFL combined. What are maybe, I'm sure there's so many different like leadership lessons that you could share with us, but maybe like what are some leadership lessons that certainly stand out to you?
Absolutely. So, there's one that to me trumps all others, and that is this. If you look at a Webster dictionary and you look up or you Google the word leadership, there's fundamentally going to be something about rank, role, title, authority, which really means you lead others. But if I asked every person listening and watching right now, right here in this moment, to think of the greatest leader that you've ever had, whoever it is, personal or professional. It could be your parent, it could be a coach, it could be a mentor, it could be current or former boss. Who is that greatest leader that has impacted you? Who is that person? And why would you follow them to the end of the earth and back? In other words, what did they do? What were their actions? What were their behaviors? And if I was asking you this question in person, and let's say I had a whiteboard or a flip chart behind me, and I said, no, really, like give me one or two word responses. What did this leader do? Oh, they listened. They cared. They had compassion. They challenged you. They took care of you as a whole person, not just as a producer. Like they told you the hard stuff, like whatever it is. You're going to come up with a list of 10, 20, 30 things that this person did, like the traits that they role modeled, their characteristics, their attributes, like the things that made them so special because you just acknowledged that they're the greatest leader you've ever had. And yes, while they were effective at leading you, my bet, my strong bet is you would not follow that leader that you just thought of to the end of the earth and back if they weren't also effective at leading themselves. Leadership starts in the mirror. There is no great leader in the world that is horrible at leading themselves. So you master leadership of self and then potentially, whether it's in a work environment or in a home as a parent or whatever it is, or you're an older brother or sister, you can lead a younger sibling, but you first have to lead yourself. You first have to lead yourself. And so true leadership starts with self, and leadership, because of the light that we just shined on this example, leadership is not about rank, role, title, authority. Leadership starts with self. And that's the world that I believe in because, Courtney, imagine in the spirit of positivity, imagine if 100% of the world was effective at leading themselves. How awesome would that world be? How awesome.
Amazing.
Amazing, right? We want people that take ownership and responsibility and accountability. Do that of yourself. Hold yourself to a high standard. Say, I'm going to get an A plus on the report card of leadership of self. And if you do that every day for the rest of your life, then you cannot lose.
It's so true. As you were speaking, I mean, a couple words, there's definitely so many different influences in my life if we start with life in general or career, for example. But the word presence today really
Mm,
resonates. And, we could be present, but it seems like we're always like multitasking. And when you are actually able to remove even technology and just to be present with one, and if they do need to be, listened or just heard, like they don't even need advice, but just somebody to be there, I feel like that's becoming more valuable, not even just in life in general, but perhaps it could be even more amplified in the in career sense of helping develop oneself and to really be present. And like I said, if it is a young professional, or if in fact it is even, manager level, but that you're present to and willing and care about the individual's progression in their career, like to really be locked in today. So I don't know. I think that was like one thing I was hearing like as you were speaking, like what do they do? They're present. That's what resonates with me.
Yeah, I think presence, and I'll give credit to a old sports mentor of mine. His name is Scott O'Neill. Present day, he's running Live Golf, but he's worn a number of hats from CEO of the Philadelphia 76ers and New Jersey Devils. He was president of Madison Square Garden, and I view him as like on the Mount Rushmore of sports business leaders. And Scott O'Neill, he wrote his first book was Be Where Your Feet Are, and Be Where Your Feet Are. It basically is a masterclass on presence and leadership itself. And I think that those two are inextricably linked.
Excellent. And speaking of books, Paul, congratulations on your recent book, Win Monday. So I would love to dive into like more of this direction of your book. What does it actually mean to win Monday, and how did that philosophy kind of evolve?
Yeah, I'll give you the backstory. The two-word definition is it's a weekly habit. Okay. So we're gonna have a conversation about habits, because at the end of the day, if you show me the quality of your habits, I'll show you the quality of your life. Period. Full stop. Show me the quality of your habits, I'll show you the quality of your business. I could keep going. Show me the quality of your habits, I'll show you the quality of your health, of your relationships, of your finances. Habits, habits, habits. So, in order to talk about Win Monday, in order to really burn the boats like I have around what will be a global mission and movement that will touch a billion with a B, a billion people in the world will win Monday one day. I know that it's happening. It is not a matter of if, it is when. And so, with that conviction, the reason I'm so convicted is because I used to do the opposite. I used to waste Mondays. And I remember early in my career, I was selling high-end corporate hospitality for awesome, sexy sporting events. So Formula One racing and World Cup and Olympics and the Masters and Kentucky Derby and all these amazing events. And I was in the Los Angeles office. Our parent company was based out of the UK. And I remember we had never met the big boss. And one day they said, "Hey, CEO is flying in from London, and buckle up and get ready." And we thought he was going to come in and give us a bear hug and take us out for happy hour because we were ahead of goal. And ironically, on a Monday morning, he steps into a conference room and says, "Each and every one of you is wasting Monday. I am looking at the reports. I am looking at the activity. I am looking at all the dashboards that I have, and I see clearly you all are wasting Mondays. And Tuesday, there's a little bit of an uptick. Wednesday, you get a little step in your stride, and there's some momentum. And Thursday and Fridays when we're maximizing all our revenues." So he said, "This is not going to work." And I want to be very clear with you all. Wasting Monday is wasting 1 out of 5 days, which is wasting 20% of your week. And if you zoom out and you waste 20% of the year, it is equivalent to wasting 2.5 months. So think about that, Courtney. Wasting versus winning Monday. You waste Mondays, you're playing a 9.5 month game. Win Monday, you're playing a 12-month game. Imagine, Courtney, if you won Monday for a decade and I waste Monday for a decade, the compounding and stacking effect of you playing a 12-month game versus me playing a 9.5 month game, you're going to kick my you know what. That's it. That's it. Okay. And like, that's just real talk. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to do things in life and business that are held to a standard of excellence, just like in the NFL and NBA, there's no shortage of gifts, talents, abilities, and skill. So you kind of have to find these competitive edges. You need to know how to win in the margins. You're not always going to be better than other people. The worst player in the NBA and NFL are still amazing. But it's process, it's system, it is habits that really get you to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack. So when I realized that this CEO was basically saying that I am wasting 2.5 months out of the year, I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I was not raised to be a person that wastes 2.5 months out of the year. And that was that permanent switch that I refuse to continue to waste 2.5 months. I am not going to play that game. I'm not going to win at this game of life if I go through that. But I will get very deep and personal with you here, Courtney, because this is an important piece to know. This was at a time that I was already in my 20s, and I had already experienced the worst day of my life. At 19 years old, I lost my dad. I lost my hero, and I'm an only child. So I realized that life is a short show. I realized that tomorrow is not guaranteed. And my dad was a person of purpose and impact. He was a continuation school teacher. His former students came up to me and told me things like he was the first person to ever believe in them. Another one said, your dad gave me a reason to think that tomorrow is worth it. And so when you know that that's the ticket to life, that's why we're here, is to lead people in places better than you found them. Imagine a handful of years later, somebody comes in and says you're wasting 2.5 months out of the year. It's unacceptable because I live for my hero. I live for my dad. Hey, Paul, did you crush it on that podcast? You know, my answer is I look up to the sky and I ask my dad, did I make you proud? Did I make you proud? And if he says yes, then hell yeah, it was a great podcast. And that's what I'm talking about. This fire, this passion, this intensity that I have, it's because tomorrow is not guaranteed for any of us. And so when you tell me that I can make a strategic choice to either play 12 months or 9.5 months, what do you think somebody with my conviction is going to do? What do you think somebody with my life background and experience is going to do? And so from pain to purpose. And I just think of Monday like this. Athletes go on winning streaks. We go on weekly streaks. My whole mission here is for every human being in the world to have 52 winning weeks a year. And there is research to back this. What Win Monday is all about is if you take an intentional action on Monday, something that has meaning to you, it matters to you, it's a game changer, it moves the needle in an area of business or life that you care about. If you want to better your mindset, awesome. Do something every Monday for your mindset. You want to be a better leader? Awesome. Do something to improve your leadership. Work on your leadership every Monday. You want to be a better husband, mother, father, brother, sister, community member? Do something in that realm every Monday. And then the research says when we accomplish something meaningful on a Monday, we have a 98%. So, Courtney, it's almost a guarantee. When you do something meaningful on a Monday, you have a 98% chance of momentum for the entire week. So, all right, we're talking to a lot of sports fans here on this podcast, right? When your team has momentum on the field or the court of the ice, you know they're going to win the game. You know. And when the opponent has momentum, you're like, gosh, not our day. Not our day. You know you're going to lose. Momentum equals results. So if you tell me that if I do something meaningful on a Monday, it is almost a guarantee that I have momentum. Win Monday is part A. Part B is momentum. Part C is consistent, predictable, repeatable results. And the hardest thing to do in life and the hardest thing to do in business is to achieve results. Even harder are consistent, predictable, and repeatable results. And Win Monday has cracked the code.
Paul, this is so powerful. I must say, after we heard you speak, my husband and I, when we came home, we're motivated people. But one thing I will say, like every Sunday night, my husband will look at me and he's like, hey, we got to get to bed early. He goes, I'm winning Monday. I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but I'm winning Monday.
I love it. I love it. Yes. And by the way, we should talk about winning Monday is not about waking up on Monday randomly and deciding what are you going to do. There has to be an element of planning and preparation. So we can absolutely talk about that.
No, most certainly. And I really do, like when you're talking about momentum, I do. I always talk about like the link between sport and momentum because there
Mm,
really is, like as you were saying, when you see a team, if they score, you just see them like building that momentum to
mm.
score again, even if the game was maybe flat at the beginning. But there's so much truth to the momentum. And I love how your philosophy, just as you're speaking, it kind of it stays like in the realm of sport, but it also translates into our general life. Like you said, if it's setting goals, leadership goals, or even in life, like as far as being, just a better individual in life, how you approach people, generally speaking, not even in career or in sport. But that's what really resonated with me after hearing you speak there was you were able to obviously go into the realm of like dental, but then to apply it to everyday life. And my question for you is realistically in life, of course, there's ups and downs, no doubt about it. So, say like the week before, I had maybe not a great week, and here we are going into the weekend, about to approach Monday. So, Paul, how do I kind of like switch my not my tone, but just like my mindset to then restart for Monday?
Great question. And here's the reality. I think there's three types of weeks. There's weeks from heaven, the weeks that fall in the middle, and then there's weeks from hell. So I'm going to answer the third bucket, okay? But let me just quickly touch on the first two. If you just had a week from heaven, then please like quadruple down. It's kind of like betting big in Vegas, like quadruple down. Put the chips in the middle of the table because somebody is on your side. You clearly have momentum. Keep crushing it if it's a week from heaven. 5 to 10% of your weeks. 80% or so are probably going to fall in the middle. They weren't awesome. They weren't horrible. It was just a little vanilla. And no problem. Then your Mondays are opportunities for those 1% tweaks, those 1% pivots, small shifts, nothing crazy. Just that it's that philosophy, Courtney, of get 1% better every day. Yeah, get 1% better every week. No problem. That's the solve for vanilla. But now let's talk about hell. Okay. So things just went sideways. And let's assume it's nothing you did. Let's assume it's something environmental, something out of your control. But hey, sometimes we're all very imperfect human beings, myself included. And so maybe you did drop the ball on something last week that just went totally sideways. Cool. Let's own it. Let's move forward. The beauty of Monday is it's a reset. Every 7 days on the calendar, you get to decide what meaning and what intention you're going to have on a Monday. It's not like, New Year's resolutions, January 1st. If your weight gets away from you on 1 year, well, that's fine, honey. I'll just get my stuff together on January 1st. Said no healthy person ever. Okay. Like, no, 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 no. That is not how this works. But the really bad thing about that analogy, even though I'm half joking, is man, I got to wait a full year to change. I got to wait 8 months to change. No, 7 days. What if every single Monday, and to your point, Courtney, what if on Sunday you checked in? Some people love, Friday before they close the laptop, they start planning for the Monday. Some people love them a little grind on a Saturday morning to set up for the week ahead. Some people do the Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. No matter what, we get ahead of Monday and say, I'm going to flip the page. Last week is not one that I'm proud of. Last week is not one that I love. Last week, everything went sideways. How am I going to win Monday? Right? Like, I'll use a real example for this, okay? And I'll be vulnerable here. I had a point, Corny, so look, you met me in San Diego, and that was actually an easy one for me because I'm coming from LA, so it wasn't heavy travel. Oftentimes I'm getting on an airplane 2 or 3 time zones away, actually sometimes to the other side of the world. A couple weeks before we're filming this, I was in Macau and Hong Kong on the other. So all that to be said, I need to get on planes, trains, and automobiles to go fulfill my calling and do what I am called to do. Okay. I love that plane. And I also love the plane to come home. My Thunder Buddy for life, my best friend, my rock, my soulmate Myra, our two awesome kids, 5 and 2 years old, PJ and Luca. I love that plane too. It's actually my definition of happiness is love both planes. But last year when Win Monday really started to become kind of the main Trojan horse of my entire speaking practice, things blew up in a good way. Like business was good last year. And so because of that, Courtney, I was away from my family more than I ever had. And I think I did a really good job if I could reflect back. I think I still got an A grade as a parent. Like I was so present with my kids and I loved because again, I lost my dad. So like being a dad's my most important. I don't even feel comfortable calling it a job, but that is why that's it. That's it. Like I am here to be the world's best dad that I can be, and everything else is second place. Like everything. And so Where I did drop the ball though was I didn't feel that connected to Myra. Like I felt like, man, like where's my best friend? And I know, yeah, we have young kids, but that's an excuse. I still did not feel connected. So if you would have asked me many times last year, I probably needed to hit the reset button on a Monday for our marriage. Not that we were in trouble, not that I was worried about the bigger picture, but I was not getting an A plus on my husband report card. I was not. And I own that. And she never told me anything. I understood, dude, you've drifted. There's a gap. Fix it. That's me talking to myself. And so, what I did, just to be very tactical here, because everybody can steal this and use it in their own life. Everybody. On Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., I now have a weekly reminder, a notification that pops up in my calendar on my phone, and it says, Win with Myra, weekly action. That's it. So if I'm home, it might be the dishes, it might be cleaning up the Hot Wheels and the monster trucks that we stepped on last night, like whatever. Like it's just stuff. It's stuff. It's small. And if I'm on the road, maybe I'm going to surprise her with flowers. Maybe I'm going to send a nice video message for her, the kids, because I'm away. It doesn't matter big, small, medium. It matters that I don't miss a week. It matters that I don't miss a Monday. So I'm not relying on my memory because I'm very busy and distracted. I'm not even relying on my love because, yes, I love her, but I would still miss Mondays if I just relied on love. I'm not relying on memory or love. I'm relying on process. I'm relying on system. I'm relying on a habit of winning Monday for my wife. That's how I became a better husband. Okay. So like, this is real stuff. I'm not even saying, oh, go be the best CEO, go be the, no, 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 no. Like I needed to fix something. I self-diagnosed and I implemented my own system, my own process. And I needed technology to be a little reminder and a notification to be like, hey, dude, knock, 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 go do something for Myra because you said you would.
Paul, and this is really something, when we listened to you speak at that conference, how real you are. Like you said, it's not just about career and talking about just the hype of how do you become your like best self in your career, but how you like share these stories of real life, of the whole, like this comes up on the podcast a lot, of this idea of like work life, fill in the blank. Is it work life balance? Is
Mhm.
it work life harmony? And so, just by sharing that story, that's so real because I'm sure, especially those go getters like type A, I mean, you're driven like with in every aspect of your life, it's like 150% or like
Yeah.
nothing at all, at least
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
goes through my
it's A
head.
plus or bust. It's A plus or bust, right? Like, and that's that there's a danger to that.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a good the story that you tell though of being like sometimes you really do we have to remind ourselves of how we are coming across, like I said, in all aspects of life, literally within our personal life, but within our career if in fact it's a young athlete, so forth. And so I think just by being vulnerable and sharing that, I really do thank you for that, just to understand like um the whole life part of it. Like I said, it's not just about career, but it's about the, balancing or the harmony of life.
It's everything. And so again, to land the plane here, the takeaway for everybody watching and listening is for me, it happened to be for my wife. You can fill in the blank with anybody or anything that is important to you. The call to action here is put it on the calendar. Show me your calendar. I'll show you your priorities. You will be as distracted as any other human being or as busy as any other successful high performer out there. Amazing. Thanks for being awesome. And that means you're going to drop the ball sometimes on the most important people and things because there's trade offs. So, what I did, I created a notification to kind of wake me up and be an awareness point. So, whoever or whatever it is that you want to prioritize, do something every Monday and don't rely on your memory, rely on process, rely on system, put it on the calendar. That's the only way that you're going to bat 1,000.
I love that, Paul. And I also, something that really stood out, like you said, with your notification, it's about the small things in life too. Like you said, if it's getting your wife flowers or picking up toys with your kids, but it really is, it's the sense of like meaning behind it. And I feel like today, like I mentioned, I mean, just constant multitasking, if technology is kind of coming into our lives, but how life is really about those small things that we do for other people that really could stand in their memory much longer than the grand events of life. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. And Paul, I always love to speak about just transitions in life. It could be within sport or affiliated with sport. And I want to highlight you are certainly, as I've been speaking, but an award winning leadership and sales speaker. And you have been trusted by Microsoft, NVIDIA, NASA. The list certainly goes on. And so, as you had mentioned, as you were transitioning out of becoming like the 15-year career that you had as an executive, and here you stand and you are about to enter into a whole new arena of public speaking, of becoming a keynote speaker. What was that transition like? If you could share with us your journey.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to work in sports the rest of my life. I'm as big of a sports fan as anybody. And by the way, that does not qualify me to crush it in the sports industry. You also have to be really freaking good at your job, and which I actually think that's the more important part. You want to be in legal at your favorite NFL team, go be the best attorney possible. You want to be in marketing, go be the best marketer possible. And that might mean starting from the ground up and like paying your dues and all of that. But the point is, I I was C-suite at the 49ers. I'm in the NFL. Football is my heart, and I like nothing's broke. I have nothing to fix. And then I get invited to a retreat with our fellow execs in the sports industry, and it was called Master Your Inner Game. And it was a 2-day offsite retreat of discovering your why, understanding your core values. And it stopped there. But my obsession, and even on my drive home, I I just knew, Courtney, that this wasn't any other event. It wasn't any other workshop. It wasn't just hearing one keynote speaker that kind of resonated. I knew that I was ready for that retreat, not going into it, of course, but on the drive home after the 2 days, I said, I think this can change my life if I actually do something with it. I'm going to take the next. So it was a Thursday, Friday. I took that entire weekend and really just isolated myself and put pen to paper and did some soul searching and looked deep in my head and my heart about like, who am I and what am I doing? What am I doing? And like, is this the treadmill I'm supposed to be on the rest of my career? And I'm not saying I had full clarity by that Sunday night or that Monday morning, but here's what I did do that following Monday. I told my sales team at the Niners all about the retreat that I had just been on because obviously they weren't there. And they one by one, they come up to me in private and they said, "Hey, I want to know my why. Can you coach me up?" And I said, "Absolutely. Meet me at 6 a.m." So it just turned into like a passion project and a side hustle. I still had the day job, but I'm just coaching the why to my team because I love them. And then the water cooler buzz started to percolate around the Niners office. And then some of the football coaches come up to me, and then some of the players, like, "Hey, what does my life after football look like? I heard you're the guy." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm the guy." And so this passion project kind of went wild. And then HR approaches me and says, "What do you think of coaching the why to our onboarding employees?" And that was the moment that I started to be known as the why coach of the San Francisco 49ers. And it was the greatest graduation of my life from career to calling. I felt called to pay this gift of purpose forward. And for me, that inner work really taught me some valuable lessons. I had, in order to transform, the retreat was one thing. I'm not convinced that anybody else's life changed because of the retreat. It has to be the right day, the right time, the right experience. You got to be ready to hear it. Most importantly, you got to be ready to act on it. Without action, nothing in life matters. So I decided to take action first by coaching it and then by actually applying it. If these are really my core values, how am I filtering my decisions through my core values? How am I filtering my actions through my core values? And prior to this retreat, I had no idea what my values were. So, of course, I couldn't have done that. But now that I had that clarity of self, that mastery of my inner compass, I was like, okay, LFG, like, let's put this out in the real world. And so, two examples that I'll share with you that led to this leap for me. One was growth. That's one of my core values. And I created a prove it test in the mirror for each one of my values. Like, hey, Paul, you really a person of growth? Prove it. And then I put some stakes on it. So I said, hey, Paul, if you're really a person of growth, do something that you said you would never do. That was just like a self test, right? And I wrote down a handful of things that I said the word never, like, oh, never say the word never. It's like, yeah, but I did because I'm human. And so I wrote down 5 things. And one of them was go back to school. You're not going to love hearing this as a college teacher and professor, okay? But I'm just going to go there. In sports, I didn't need an MBA to climb a career ladder. In some industries, you do. Sports isn't really built like that. So I always said, what's the point? What's the point? What's the point? But that is a fixed mindset. The growth mindset would say, what if? What if you went back to school? What if? And just because you don't need it to climb a ladder doesn't mean it's not a good idea, right? Growth minded Paul. And so I kind of like took my medicine and I end up applying to a couple of schools, awesome schools. I end up getting accepted into the executive MBA program at the University of Michigan. And they have a Los Angeles kind of satellite cohort. So I was a West Coast guy. I just cruised down to LA. I was still in the Bay at the time, once a month. And Courtney, I had a coach, an executive coach, first time in my life that I had an executive coach. Her name is Sue-Ann. She was provided to me as a really, like, I now think of it as like a gift from God, but really Sue-Ann, in our first coaching session, she changed my life fundamentally. And here's what she said. She said, Paul, I know what you do. You run sales for a football team. Amazing. What do you love? And this is a good lesson here. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? What do you tolerate? So love, hate, tolerate. Everyone listening and watching, you should audit all things. What do I love? What do I hate? What do I tolerate? Love, hate, tolerate. And I answered all three. Sue-Ann said, go deeper on the love bucket. I said, all right, Sue-Ann, well, I love being a leader. I love the people side. I love the culture side. I love coaching people just like you. And she said, awesome. On a good day, what percentage of time do you do that? And I'm like slouching down in my chair, knowing that I would hate the answer. I think the truth was like 10%. And I'm like, Sue-Ann, 20%, 20%. She goes, oh, Paul, if you became your boss tomorrow, does that 20% go up, down, or sideways? And I thought about my boss. They're almost all strategy, no people. So I said, Sue-Ann, I actually think it would go down. And this was the question that got me. She said, so what are you after? What are you after, Paul? And that is when I started to really understand the magnitude of this moment to say, I've invested my entire career to climb a ladder. I am literally obsessed with career growth. And for somebody that's obsessed with the next step on the ladder, Sue-Ann made me realize I don't even want it. I don't want what's next. I've dedicated 15 years of my career to reach up for that next spot, be a team president in the sports industry. And I actually don't want to, because it would have taken me away from my zone of genius and my purpose of people and leadership and culture. There was almost a strategic position, one of those classic you're in meetings to talk about meetings. That's not what I want to do. I want to be with the players. You know, like in football, sometimes there's a head coach and a positional coach. I need to be touching the players. Like, I don't want to be in the ivory tower and like, hey, here's how we're going to take the battlefield. No, I am a player coach. And Sue-Ann made me realize that I am a player coach. I need to be in the trenches with players or I don't feel fulfilled. I'm not fulfilling my purpose. I'm not making my hero proud, my dad, right? Like, it's like all of that. He needed to be a teacher of students, not a principal. He was a teacher. And that's what Sue-Ann made me realize. And so I had to then open my mindset of like, if I didn't climb this ladder, then what would I do? And I finally thought of my dad to kind of seal the deal for me. My dad, I know for a fact that his strongest value is impact. He made a difference and he left people in places better than he found them. So this was the question I asked myself, Courtney, after the coaching combo. I said, can I create more impact inside of the four walls of the sports industry or beyond these walls? And that was the moment, that question, mentally, I knew I was going to leave sports when I asked myself that. It was such I didn't know where I was going to go. It took me 9 months to figure out the details, but I knew I cannot stay because me staying in sports is leaving impact on the table. but that was all based on one retreat of mastering my inner game.
That is so powerful. There was two words that came out of that, like just in my mind as you were speaking, but the power of reflection, of having that executive coach to present to you. Because I feel like sometimes going through life, we could almost be on autopilot, just like you said, like it was always the next level. Like, what is next? What is next? You keep climbing. And then, unless you take time to reflect, even how far you've come, but then where do you want to head? And like you said, like, why am I going in this direction? But it really is, reflection could be so powerful. And I think what's really interesting as you were speaking about this, like, how did you develop though that confidence? Like you said, you knew you were not supposed to stay anymore. You just intuitively almost like knew it. But how did you build that confidence to take that next step?
I developed a habit. I wasn't calling it Win Monday at the time, but here's what I did. And it actually was a weekly practice. And ironically, I did do it on a Monday, but I swear to you, I was not saying the words Win Monday yet. Okay. So I'll take you back. And this is a process that I'm happy to share with everybody listening and watching. So for one, you brought up the word confidence. I've seen NFL and NBA players, some that rise in the biggest moments, some that fall flat. The gap of those two groups of players is not gifts, talents, abilities, and skills. It's confidence. It is point blank confidence. And after I went through my own journey of transformation, like I just described, I've been coaching this confidence formula. And this is what I want to share with your entire audience right now. Confidence equals values times action. So you first have to know at least one of your core values. You could Google a list of common personal values. You'll get a list of 50 or 100. Choose one. Choose the one that jumps off the screen or jumps off the page and screams, this is me. So boom, confidence equals fill in the value here. And then you have to put it in action every week. So here's my journal prompt. And this is something, please call pause on this and get a pen out and write this down for everybody listening and watching. On a Monday, you can journal, or on a Sunday. For the week ahead, I will live my value of blank by blank. The first blank is the value that you chose. The second is an action. So let's say that you chose a value like joy. Awesome. For the week ahead, I will live my value of joy by cooking my favorite meal. All right, simple, small, accessible. Everybody in the room can do it. Everybody. But now let me up the ante a little bit. Let me get off joy. And a second example could be courage. Awesome. If one of your core values is courage, for the week ahead, I will live my value of courage by having that challenging conversation that I've been putting off. You wouldn't have that conversation because Paul said you would have that conversation because courage is your core value. So, Courtney, what I did the research on habits. Fun fact, habits are formed for the average person with 4 weeks of repetition. So whether it's I want to start going to the gym, whether it's I want to start eating healthier, whether I want to be a better husband, whether I want to be a better you got to get in 4 reps at least. And it's got to be over the course of 4 weeks. That's kind of the science behind it, right? So in other words, you do the same value and you journal it for 4 consecutive weeks. So joy for 4 weeks, courage for 4 weeks, excellence for 4 weeks, fairness for 4 weeks, whatever, growth for 4 weeks, impact for 4 weeks. Doesn't matter what the value is, but you got to take 4 actions over 4 weeks and get this intentionality. And now it becomes internal to who you are. That's how I took ownership of my values. After the retreat, I walked away with 5 values in no particular order. They are growth, belief, impact, authenticity, and courage. Month 1, I did on growth. Month 2, I did on belief, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So 5 months after the retreat, I had mastered and put into action, like in a habitual fashion, my 5 core values, and my confidence rose. And lo and behold, I told you it took me 9 months to pull a trigger and make a decision to take the leap and figure out the details. Well, what happened was the first 5 of the 9, I'm coaching the why in parallel. I'm doing this values journal times 5 months. And then it took me about 4 months really to say, all right, I'm going to play offense here. I'm going to go shake some trees and figure out what else is out there because I got to get out of here. Nothing wrong with the place. I wasn't running away from sports. I found what I wanted to run toward. And it took me a couple months to put all the pieces together.
That is so powerful. And, even just reflecting on your journey as you were becoming a speaker, getting the wheels moving forward and being able to provide others just your experience and all the life lessons? Like, what are maybe some moments? I'm sure there's many, but as you have spoken to just very large corporations, met so many people along the way, what is maybe a couple like positive moments that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I think the positive moments for all of us is when you think about positivity. And by the way, if you want more positivity in your life, then I would insert positivity into that journal that I just said. I will live my value of positivity by, and I think that can be a way to kind of hack the system and inject more positivity into whatever it is. I'll share one quick example, and it's not about my book, but it happened to be in my second book, Better Decisions Faster. I call them green lights. Green lights of how you have confidence to make better decisions faster. A green light is when your head and your heart are in, right? A red light would be when your head and heart are out. And a yellow light is when either your head or your heart is on board. So obviously, the messy middle of yellow is where a lot of us get stuck. But what I have really learned is if you want to be positive, you got to surround yourself with green light people, green light energy. You got to put yourself in green light environments. Like, if only your head is on board, logically, I should be here, but your heart is like, I hate this place. This is so not me. It's not the truth. It's inauthentic. And I've been in those environments too, where like logically the world is like, you're crushing it. You're killing it. You're so successful. You're so awesome. But your heart's like, I don't even like this place. I don't even like this person. And then you just stick with it. That's a horrible life. I'm telling you right now, you're going to have massive regret when this show is all done because your heart is really your truth. I'm not suggesting it's heart overhead. I'm saying it's a yes and it's not an either or. So positivity comes from when both your head says, I think this is a good idea, and your heart says, I feel this is a good idea. That's green light energy. And the more that I have matured and progressed through my career and my life, I just don't accept red lights anymore. And if it's the bad yellow where my heart is not in and I know it will never become a green, I figure out ways to cut it. It's just life is too short. You gotta burn the boats for green lights. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I am telling you that a life of yellow and red is not a life that I believe in. And I am one of the more positive people in the world in the sense of don't mistake my intensity for, oh, he's not happy. He's not. No, I'm just fired up. I am fired up for now. I'm fired up for an hour from now. I'm fired up for tomorrow. I'm fired up for next Monday and the following and the following. I am positive because I refuse to settle for anything less than a hell yes green light.
That is so powerful, Paul. I mean, just your energy and like talk about being pumped up. Like you really do. You pump people up for life. But I really do. I want to reflect on something real quick. And I love how you mentioned when you have that set value, if you will, with positivity, for example, but how you follow it up with the action part. I think that there's so many like, people have so many great ideas out there every single day, but it really is it's about taking that first step and taking that action. And so every time you were speaking about just the values, but then it has to follow up with the action. I think that's really the powerful part. And then when you were also speaking about the habits and how it takes like 4 weeks to develop, I think about like going to the gym, Paul. I mean, I'm sure with your busy
Yeah.
schedule, like trying to fit that in, but man, Paul, when I have taken at least like 2 or 3 days off, trying to get back into that routine is difficult. And so I could see how, like, when the research tells us, like you said, I mean, 4 weeks of just constant, like, to develop that habit, a strong habit. I always do. I just think about like workouts for some reason.
Yeah, well, let me go there. Let me go there because everybody, and if somebody doesn't virtually raise their hand here, then you're lying. Every human being in this thing called planet Earth has had the feeling that I should go to the gym, but I just don't feel like it. Okay. 100% of humanity has had that feeling. And so knowing that if you were to, in that example, go to the gym, you drag yourself, you force yourself, and then you crush it for 45, 60, 90 minutes, whatever it is. Have you ever said, I regret that?
That's such
Said
a good
nobody ever. Nobody, right? And so it sucks to go, but you're happy you did it on the back end because you probably have committed to be a healthier person. And if you're going to be a healthy person, you're going to have to do things that you don't feel like doing in the moment. You're going to have to go against willpower. You're going to have to be motivated when you don't feel motivated. And even if you lack motivation, you still follow through with the action because you committed to go to the gym. And win Monday is like going to the gym. You're not always going to feel like winning on Monday. Neither do I. You're not always going to feel like a winner on Monday. Neither do I. And I'm the win Monday guy. But I do it anyways. And when I take a winning action on a Monday, I never regret it. I don't regret going to the gym against my willpower. I don't regret going to the gym against my motivation. And that's how Win Monday works. Going to the gym is good for you, whether you feel like it or not. Win Monday is good for you, whether you feel like it or not. Commitment begins when motivation ends. I'm not here to talk about be motivated to win Monday. Motivation expires. It is temporary. It is not a good strategy. Do not bank on motivation. Motivation doesn't get you to the gym. Motivation doesn't get you to win Monday, but commitment gets you to the gym and commitment gets you to win Monday.
That's so true. And, your message, it's so powerful because it's so realistic. It's comes on this podcast a lot, just the conversation of, positivity versus even like toxic positivity, but how you really do the space in between the journey. We don't always see that sometimes as far as like you were saying even at the beginning of balancing the sense of just even life, personal life, but then also career. And I genuinely want to thank you for sharing your story today because it's very relatable. We may not be of course at your level, but I think it's very relatable in the capacity of everyday life, how there's ups and there's downs in life. And sometimes when we look on paper, I've spoken about this so many times, but it's really true. It's when you look at somebody's resume or CV, it may look like just a very smooth transition along the way, but behind the scenes during certain periods of time, you're trying to present that you have it all together, but deep down, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Or what you were saying, I just knew that this was not for me. I had to move forward in another direction. And so I just want to genuinely thank you for sharing and being vulnerable to share your story. But could we just end with a positive message or a positive quote for the community?
Absolutely. So I said it earlier, but it bears repeating because now I want to double click on it. Love both planes. What that means to me is for me, I love the plane to get to do what I get to go do. Notice I don't have to do it. I get to go do it. I'm grateful to get to do what I get to do for a living. And when I fly home, I am the happiest human being on earth because I've created a life outside of work that I also love. So I love my work. I love my life. I love both planes. Now, for somebody else, you're a remote employee. Awesome. Your plane is a walk down the hallway. But do you love the walk down the hallway? And do you love the life that you've created when you walk the other direction in the hallway? And we can take this wherever we want to go, but you got to really lock in and say, work life is not about balance. Some people say harmony, some say integration. I just say work life success, but you got to be smart and curate what it is that you want to get an A plus in. And you can't do A pluses in too many things because time is finite. Time runs out. So for me, my list, this doesn't mean it needs to be anybody else's. There's only 4 things that matter to me. There's 4 things. It is family, it is work, it is health, it is happiness. Ironically, those are the 4 things that I journal every day. Ironically, those are the 4 things that I journal at night to prep for the next day. Ironically, that's how I measure success. Ironically, that's how I measure everything that matters to me is like, if I can move the needle in small ways every day for my family, for my work, for my health, for my happiness, because I want to enjoy this ride, that's success. That's success. My LinkedIn profile is not success. That's one of my 4. And that's what the world knows me for. But when this game of life is over for me, just like it was for my dad far too soon, I lost him when he was 55 and I was 19. I know that I am not going to die with regret. If I can make deposits into those 4 things every day, I will not die with regret. And that to me is a life worth living. So I just want to pay that forward of like, figure out what it is that you're committed to get an A plus in, and you cannot take days off. You cannot just make the daily deposits, do something intentional on a Monday to set the tone for that week in the areas of work or life that are important to you. And you literally can't lose.
That is so powerful. And, as I reflect, Paul, I mean, there's several words to like kind of just sum up our conversation today. But having that really is, it's like, I guess, a phrase, but like just a positive mindset and the power of reflection, of kind of just assessing where you're at in this moment of life and where you want to be, as far as even if it's like setting goals, like short-term goals and long-term goals. And I love how you mentioned the power of journaling, of taking time to actively write something out. There is something so different about, I don't
Mhm.
know, like, typing
Yeah, you
something.
have to. You have to.
Yeah, because it really does. I think it allows for that sense of reflection, but also to feel those goals. I think it's one thing to wish for something, but then also to really like embody it and to feel what it would be like to obtain something. And so that's something that really, really stood out. But
And that's why you
Paul.
gotta do it daily, because when you do it daily, they're not gonna be big swings of the bat. I don't care if every day I get a bunt single for my family and for work and for health and for happiness. You know what? A life of bunt singles, you're gonna be a Hall of Fame baseball player. I promise you that, okay? Like that's really what this is about. It's not even about big swings. It's a compounding effect. It's a stacking effect. You build the right habits through process and system and commit to winning Monday, and that's gonna be your start.
So, Paul, thank you so much for your time, taking time out of your busy schedule to be on this podcast today and to share all of your wisdom and knowledge. So, I'm very, very appreciative.
Thank you, Courtney. I loved it, and we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Paul.